They eat raw meat, and they are proud of it. This is not a survival story. This is not poverty. This is not desperation. This is a tradition, a celebration, a culture that has existed for thousands of years. And once you understand why, you will never look at it the same way again. Let's start with the basics. Ethiopia is one of the oldest countries on Earth, one of the oldest civilizations in human history, and inside that ancient culture exists a dish that most of the world cannot understand. It is called kitfo, and it is raw minced beef, seasoned with spiced butter, mixed with herbs, and served fresh, not cooked, not seared, not even slightly heated, raw. And in Ethiopia, this is not street food. This is not something you eat when nothing else is available. This is what you serve at weddings, at funerals, at family gatherings. When someone important comes to your home, you serve raw meat. Because in Ethiopian culture, raw meat is respect. Now, I need you to think about something. Every culture has a food that outsiders find strange. Every single one. Some cultures eat insects. Some eat fermented fish so strong it clears a room. Some eat organs. Some eat blood. Some eat things with no English name. And every time, but the outsider says, how can you eat that? But the person eating it says, how can you not? Because food is never just food. Food is memory. Food is identity. Food is the language of belonging. And in Ethiopia, raw meat speaks that language louder than anything else. So where did this come from? Historians trace it back centuries. One popular story says it began with Ethiopian warriors. When soldiers were traveling, they could not light fires. A fire at night reveals your position to the enemy, so they ate their meat raw, seasoned with whatever spices they carried, and they survived, and they fought, and they won. Over time, what began as necessity became identity. The warriors came home, they brought the habit with them, and slowly it moved from battlefield to dinner table, from survival to celebration. That is how many traditions are born, not from luxury, but from necessity that became pride. Now let's talk about how it is actually done, because this is not random. This is not just cutting meat and putting it on a plate. The process matters. First, the meat must be fresh, not refrigerated for days, fresh from that morning. In traditional Ethiopian households, the animal is often slaughtered the same day it is served. That is not carelessness. That is the opposite. That is the highest standard of freshness possible. Then the meat is minced by hand, slowly, carefully, mixed with niter kiba, which is a spiced clarified butter infused with ginger, garlic, onion, and Ethiopian herbs. Then mitmata is added, a bright orange spice blend, sharp, warm, complex, and it is served immediately on injera, the spongy sourdough flatbread that is the foundation of Ethiopian eating. You tear the injera, you scoop the kitfo, you eat with your hands, and in that moment, you are connected to something ancient. But let's be honest about something. Is it dangerous? That is a fair question, and the answer is, it depends. Raw meat carries real risks. Bacteria, parasites, contamination. Ethiopian medical professionals have raised these concerns, especially in urban areas where the source of meat is less controlled, and the Ethiopian government has at various points encouraged people to at least lightly cook the meat. A version called kitfo lebleb exists, lightly warmed, slightly cooked, for those who want the flavor without the full risk. But many Ethiopians refuse it, because to them, lebleb is not the same thing. The texture changes, the experience changes, the meaning changes, and that tension between tradition and safety, between culture and modernity, is something Ethiopia is still navigating today. And here is the deeper truth. Every generation inherits something from the one before it. Some of it is wisdom, some of it is beauty, some of it needs to be questioned, and the way a culture handles that question says everything about who they are. Ethiopia is not a country that abandoned its traditions to look modern. Ethiopia is a country that looked the modern world in the eye and said, we know who we are. That is not stubbornness. That is identity. That is self-respect on a civilizational level. So the next time you see something unfamiliar, something that makes your stomach turn, something that your culture told you was wrong or strange or dangerous, ask yourself one question before you judge. Do I actually understand this, or do I just not recognize it? Because there is a difference between something being wrong and something being different. And that difference is the beginning of real understanding. Drop your country below and tell me, what is one tradition from your culture that the rest of the world probably does not understand? I want to read them, because every answer is a window into a WW.